We are live, and I am here with Sonee Singh, and I'm so happy and looking forward to this conversation. So, welcome, Sonee. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while, so I'm glad that we're here finally.
Yes, me too. Um, so, I'm just going to read your very short bio for the audience, whether you're joining today or in the recording. But Sonee Singh is a novelist, a poet, a published author, an avid reader, a doctor of divinity, and a cross cultural seeker of deep knowing. And she wears so many hats. This is not even the hat I knew her under when I first met her many, many years ago. My gosh, I think that's over 20 years ago now. It's quite a
Yes,
while.
quite a while.
Um, yeah, and so there's been a lot of evolution, and where I felt like our paths intersected for this conversation was in the writing and the spirituality, and I was particularly interested in your last post where you talked about how meditation helps your writing process. So that's something I would love to dive into. And also, we just had a pretty interesting dialogue off camera that I'd love to return back to as well, just about the writing process as a growth tool, really, like how challenging it can be. Um, but tell us how did you make that wide arc from your past selves to where you are now as a writer?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you said, Kim, we met however many years ago, I don't even want to say. And at that point, I was very much into hospitality and the spa world, but I sort of pivoted slightly into wellness and I had wanted to do always something on my own. I was doing wellness coaching, I was doing custom aromatherapy blends. And what happened was I used to put out this newsletter on aromatherapy and wellness related topics. And I soon found out that out of everything that I had to do for that job, the writing part was what I enjoyed the most. And I've always used writing as a medium of expression. It's always been easier for me to express myself in writing. At the same time, I went through quite big health issues. I ended up in the hospital. It was quite serious. And when I got out of all of that, I kept on saying to myself, there has to be something more than this. And one of the things that I kept on hearing about was intuition and this concept of intuition and what is it and how do you connect with it. And I wasn't really sure that I had any of the answers. I didn't even know how to connect to my intuition. The only thing I know or recognized about it was that anytime I hadn't followed it, I'd gone wrong. But I didn't
Mhm.
know, like, how do I use it? How do I access it? What is it even? And so I started asking all of these questions to the universe essentially. And, when you start asking, I feel the universe delivers. And it sort of came together because as I was working on this wellness blog, I was also looking for help on how to become a better writer. And I joined the Elephant Journal. I don't know if you know or are familiar with that publication. They had an academy. I don't actually know if they still have it, but they did. This is going back probably a decade. And so I joined the academy, and there was a group of us that sort of stayed in touch. And one of the first things that we did was uh, read The Artist's Way. And Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way introduces this concept of morning pages, which at the beginning, when I was reading this book, I did religiously. And for anybody who doesn't know, morning pages, what she says is you wake up first thing in the morning before you do anything else, is write stream of consciousness for 3 pages. And I really found that that shifted things for me in a very significant way. I sort of cleared the gunk that I held in my head. It was just a good way to sort of vent all these thoughts that were constantly running. And what I found was that I started connecting with my intuition through
Mm.
what came out of the writing process. And so then I just decided to focus on writing. I mean, it was this like, it just became this beautiful medium for me to express creativity, express myself, express anything that was going on. And I don't publish everything that I write, but I do a lot of writing. And so I don't do morning pages anymore religiously. I just do stream of consciousness writing, which is essentially the same thing, but I do it at any time of the day or when I find it more convenient because it got to a point where sustaining it first thing in the morning was not an option for me to move forward.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. I've been curious to see how other people, because I also have done morning pages, and I find that it just is when I approach it more intuitively these days, it seems to yield more fruit rather than having kind of that boxy structure to it. It's a great place to start.
It is, absolutely. I think the good thing about morning pages is that it gives you, as you said, that place to start, sort of a structure to say, how am I going to get myself on the page or express or vent or whatever it is that you need to do. But yeah, at the moment, I do it a lot more intuitively, and it changes. I don't always do it at the same time. I don't always complete 3 pages. Sometimes I've done it timed, where I write for a certain amount of minutes. At this point where I am, it doesn't matter what time of the day I do it. I do it once a day, but I also don't beat myself up if for whatever reason I can't do it on a particular day. So it's not a task. It's just something that I naturally go to, and I fill 2 pages. And that for me right now feels good. But there's other times when I've done different things. So I
Mhm.
definitely, like you, use it more intuitively now than I did
Mhm.
before.
Yeah, yeah, great. And so it's funny hearing your arc, which I actually had not heard that sort of transitional passage from you prior to this chat. I'm curious, what was it about the writing that felt like, the thing that you had to share? I mean, you have so much, you have such a rich background in wellness, from the Mandarin Oriental where we first met. That's a fairly high level position and a acknowledgement of the deep wisdom that you have to share in that world. And so I'm curious how that translates into your writing, and what is it that you feel your messaging is in your writing?
Well, my messaging is the same journey that I have been through, which is this trust in your soul. That's the name of the publication that I have. It's the name of the company that I started publishing my books under because I've also gone through a journey of having a publisher to then recently learning how to self-publish. And it's what has resonated with me the most in my writing journey. Uh, how I went from morning pages and this wellness blog to expressing writing was, one of the things that Julia Cameron tells you to do in The Artist Way is one for a period of time not to read your writing so that you don't go back and judge and criticize yourself. Uh, but then actually to start looking through it, and that's when I started realizing that there were nuggets of wisdom that I was expressing through this writing, and most of it is gibberish. Most of it is are things that I cannot use and would never show anybody, and in fact discard. But what I realized was that there was quite a lot that was coming out of it, and one of the clearest things was writing a novel. So I've always wanted to write a novel since I was a child. And as you said, I'm an avid reader. I don't ever remember a time in my life since I learned how to read that I was not reading a book. It's just a part of who I am and what I do. And I read all sorts of books. I read novels, not nonfiction, historical, whatever it is, spiritual books on spirituality now. And so what I started realizing is that the story that I think had been latent in my mind just started emerging through morning pages. Like it started coming out. And so then I just started working on it. And the result was the first novel that I published, which is Lonely Dove.
Mhm.
And I've recently republished it. So it's now this. And that was what came out of morning. Not that the book came out of morning pages, but that the idea or the concept of the story came out through morning pages. And sometimes, when I was struggling in the middle of the story or I didn't know where to go, morning pages actually helped me resolve it.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's a really great tip, takeaway for people who are writers and stuck and, maybe not know where to go next, like me at the moment. But we'll get to that later. One of the things I loved about that book was that the way you framed the lessons in there, it's a fiction book.
Mhm.
And so your narrator, your, main character, who bears a little bit of resemblance to you in working in
Yes.
the wellness world, um, which, which I found interesting because I learned a lot about, like, aromatherapy, for example, which is not
Mhm.
something I've really spent time with. And, but what I loved about it was, it read to me a little bit like, one of those books, I wanna say, I think I told you this, The Celestine Prophecy. Like,
Yes.
there was a lot of overlap of, like, just auspicious coincidence and, watching this character sort of, navigate her life based on these coincidences, and I think that's such a powerful way of teaching because when you read it in a story like that, it resonates on a deeper level, for me anyway, than if I were reading a nonfiction book about that kind of thing. And so, and there was some real sweet, I remember some very heart warming moments from the book too. So there was a lot of, there's an emotional charge to it as well. And yeah, I really appreciated how you, rather than just, because you do have all that background, rather than just laying it out XYZ, you wove it into a story. So I think that was really a powerful way of doing it.
Well, thank you, and the funny thing is I didn't necessarily intend to do that. When I was
Mm,
writing the book, I was writing, what they usually suggest or advise is write what you know, and I didn't want to write. Yes, there's a lot of similarities between me and Angie and her background. Not entirely and not exactly, but ultimately I wanted to write from what I knew. And so I turned her into a journalist, and I turned her into a journalist that covers wellness, because
mm,
that was what I was writing. And so what's interesting is that a lot of the stories that she covers were things that I was looking at myself. Not that I wrote the same stories, but just things that were familiar. And it was a really good starting point, simply because then I didn't have to make up so many things. But I also wanted to convey similarities to the journey that I had, even though her journey is different from mine. But it evolved in a way, and how, when I first started asking what is intuition and how do I even connect with intuition, one thing led to another. It was like first the artist way, then the first spiritual teacher you can say that I started following was Maston Kipp, who is a very practical spiritual teacher. I don't follow him anymore, and I think that that's part of kind of the journey that you find people at the time that you need it, and then you evolve and you grow to the next stage, and that's what I wanted to show in her. But I also didn't want to make it so confusing and add so many elements, so I chose to just stick, for the sake of the story, with her having just one spiritual teacher who's Margarita, and have that one person kind of deliver all of the guidance that she needed, along with her best friend Sophie. But in reality, for me, it was multitude of people. And so
mhm.
I wanted to convey it in a way that was relatable. And it wasn't until I finished the story that I realized, oh, I've got a bigger message here, and I've got a bigger story to tell. Um, and yeah, it was a revelation even for me.
I love that. Yeah, that's always fun when you get teachings from your own teachings.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes you end up writing something, and then when you go back to read it, well, many times I look at it and think, "This is the worst thing I've ever written in my life." But many times you read and you think like, "Did that actually come from me? Did I
right.
actually say that?"
Yes, it's funny because, when we first met, I was teaching yoga,
Mhm.
and I would often this happened so often in teaching where I would say, it's I have an hour or an hour, 2 hours with this group of people, and I have to keep talking as I'm guiding them through the postures, and so I never really knew what was gonna come out of my mouth. It's not like you walk around with a script, and sometimes I would say things, and I would be like, "Dang, why don't you ever take your own advice? That's really good advice." And I'd be like, "I don't know where it came from, but there it is." And yeah, sometimes I think it's that getting out of our own way for the intuition to come through. And yeah,
Mhm.
which leads me to ask you why do you feel like this it feels so important and relevant to me right now, especially? I don't know if you have that sense, but I'm just wondering, do you have a sense of why this is important right now?
Well, what has evolved, and the answer is yes, but what has evolved out of particularly republishing Lonely Dove, because the first edition of Lonely Dove came out 5 years ago, and because I've changed my publishing journey from being traditionally published to self-published, I went through a re-edit of Lonely Dove. I didn't change the story, but I did, you evolve as a writer. Who I was, in fact, 10 years ago when I started writing this book to who I am now is a completely different person. And I still wanted to honor the story, so I didn't change it. But
Mhm,
I did edit quite a bit in terms of the writing style. I improved my writing style. But what emerged from that was, in fact, larger teachings because I felt like this book actually carries quite a big lesson. And I'm in the process of writing a program that is called, or is going to be called, Uncaged, Free Yourself, Reclaim Your Life. And it's this concept of part of the journey that I have been through, that Angie as a character has been through, and it's releasing the conditioning, the obligations, expectation, perfectionism, fear, and this kind of fake identity, not fake, but this persona that we sometimes put out there that is not our true selves, that is not who we truly are. And I feel that there is such deep healing when we honor who we are, when we don't uh, pretend to be somebody else just because we want to conform to society or culture or family or expectations or whatever obligations it is that we've carried. And that has been an extremely transformative and healing journey for me. It was for Angie in the book. And then I realized this is a bigger message. This is something that could help quite a lot of people, both men and women, but in a way, women in particular, when it comes to obligations and feeling that you need to fit a role.
mm,
But I mean, really anybody, because we all it almost seems like we all have to learn this journey of coming back to ourselves, and that's the journey of intuition too. It's when you come back to yourself that you start honoring your intuition, you connect with your intuition, that you become more spiritually aware. And in fact, you also start seeing yourself as somebody separate. You start seeing yourself as your connectedness. You start engaging more with people on a deeper level. You start engaging with life in a deeper level. And I think that's just what we need right now, more
y
so than ever.
yes, and I'm curious, what just came up for me is, do you have a sense of how to distinguish between intuition and something, more preconceived or fabricated, like a habitual story? Does that make
Uh,
sense to you?
Kind of, like, I'm are you asking me, like, say, for instance, something that you're just used to do it and you just continue doing without thinking versus really tuning into your intuition, or
Well, no, 'cause it's more like, sometimes to go back to what we were just talking about pre-cam before we got on the recording, we have both experienced being edited. So we present our manuscripts to editors, and there's a lot of feedback, and sometimes that feedback makes sense and it resonates, and then sometimes I really resist a lot of the feedback. That's not what I meant to say, it's not how I wanna do this, and yet there's another part of me like an intuition, two ways. There's an intuition of like, well, maybe there's something that I can learn here. Maybe there's some place that I'm blind or closed that I can't see something that is a lesson I could learn. And then there's another little reaction, let's just call it, which I could take as intuition, but it's really just resistance. It's
Mhm.
really just a little voice saying, like, "You're not good enough. You'll never be able to figure this out. Why do you even bother?" All that whole story. And it's like, how do we distinguish between the voice of true intuition and the voice of something that is masquerading as intuition?
Mm. So what I use, and I'm just for lack of a better word, let's just call it true to me.
Mhm,
I go through this process of trying to determine, is this true to me?
mhm,
And it takes time. It's not an automatic thing. But similar, as you said, with receiving feedback from an editor that, especially when you've worked on something and given it your all, you're attached to it. And so it's hard sometimes to separate yourself from the feedback that you're receiving versus what you have wanted to tell. And to me, the biggest indicator of, am I using my intuition, or is this resistant to something I really should be doing, but I just really don't want to do? Or, I have, some hesitation towards because it actually touches a insecurity or whatever it is, deeper feeling is I sit with it and I ask myself, where is this coming from? So I take myself through a series of questions, and it's that, where is this coming from? Does this really feel true to me?
mhm.
Am I acting out of guilt? Am I acting out of fear? Am I acting out of obligation? Am I acting out of love? And when I start asking myself these questions, it opens up to the answer. And sometimes it is a very clear, I am acting out of fear. And then I start digging into it. Where is this fear coming from? What is this fear trying to tell me? And if it's an insecurity of some sort, then I sort of work through it, go back and read the feedback from the editor that I was resisting, and then say, actually, you know what? They have a point. But
Mm.
if it's an intuition and it's something that I realize I cannot change, it's part of my story and it's honoring my story, but the feedback that I'm getting is wanting to change the direction of the story, then I realize that I don't have the resistance and it's something out of love. Like I don't feel the tightness, I don't feel the closedness, I feel a sense of openness. And then I realize I am not following the feedback because I am being true to myself. I am honoring myself and the story that I want to tell. And that's how I distinguish the two.
So it sounds like it comes from the body.
Yes. I use the body quite a lot. My body, and I feel like everybody is the same. It's just your own relationship with your body is very personal and very unique. But um, my body speaks to me all the time.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the important thing also is to give yourself space, because sometimes, the I don't tend to act in my initial reaction because it's an emotional reaction. And I allow the emotions to come up and I allow whatever's going to surface, but I don't act immediately. I usually read through the feedback that I've gotten from an editor and then just wait, like just sit with it and then eventually come back to it and go portion by portion and work through it. I've actually come to enjoy the process because I feel that this process of resistance and intuition, one has clarified my intuition, but also has enabled me to get to know myself better. Because
Mm.
every time I uncover a resistance, it's an opportunity to say, what's going on at a deeper level? Like, what is this? What is this about? What is this fear about? What is this? What is coming up? And it's an opportunity to heal. It's an opportunity to look at myself and say, there's something else I can work on and let go of, or work through.
Yeah, that is super helpful, and it's almost like rather than taking it as a disempowering process, you're taking back power, you're empowering yourself from it.
That is a really
Yeah,
good way of putting it, but yeah, exactly. That is it's
yeah,
because ultimately somebody's feedback is somebody's feedback, and
mm,
there's value in it because it's a different set of eyes for pointing things out that you don't see yourself. Um,
yes,
and where I can identify things about other people's writing, I don't identify it about my own. That's why I always use editors. Um,
right.
so because you know, enable you to see things that you wouldn't yourself, and it isn't, but it also isn't always the right thing to do. And that's where
Ex
this process helps you kind of hone into, is this a change that I legitimately have to make to improve my story or to improve my writing versus they have an opinion, it's just their opinion, but I feel more centered in what I want to do.
Yeah, I love this because it's like your process sort of mirrors your subject matter.
That is true. I hadn't noticed that, but yes, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, I mean, I feel like you've already answered this, but how can people apply this? Like if somebody's writing or somebody's wanting to sort of dive into the more intuitive aspects of their own creative process, what would you suggest or recommend?
Stream of consciousness writing, I think it's a great way to start. And especially, for instance, when you're having resistance, stream of consciousness allows you to just do that that mental dump onto a page to get to the bottom of what is happening.
Yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't have to be stream of consciousness. It could just be journaling. You know, you just sit there and start writing through what is happening with you, what is really going on at a deeper level. Does this feel true to you or not? Or just sit quietly in meditation. That's another thing that I do quite often. You know, it doesn't always have to turn towards writing. I just sort of give myself that space and sit quietly and just kind of figure out where am I feeling it in my body, what's happening, and then work through it that way and ask myself the questions that I just asked. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Those are
taking a step
great.
back in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, super helpful. So where can people learn more?
Well, on Substack, I don't have very many followers, so if you'd like to follow, that's a good place to start. I am pretty regular in terms of the articles that I post, and I post articles on all sorts of things, whether it's writing or spirituality or sometimes a mix of both, as you pointed out with the recent one that I had. But also
Mhm.
on my website, which is soneesingh.com.
Okay. Perfect. So I'll leave a link for that in our recording. And I don't know, anything else you want to share with readers about where you are in your process or how it relates to where we all are right now? Put in
Yeah, well, I
context.
mean, I've got the novels that I'm republishing. I'm also working on poetry. This is the next book of poetry that's coming out. It's called Where I Call Home. And as the drawing suggests, it's kind of a journey of going within. What I
Mm,
have found through my writing is that whereas the novels, even though realistic or fictional, the poetry is actually my journey. It's my story. It's where I reveal myself. And that too came through morning pages. It was this process of recognizing as I would review and read that a lot of the writing that I had was lyrical. And so it opened me up to poetry. But yeah, the poetry is personal, the novels are fictional, but they all relate to this journey that we're all on to sort of get to know ourselves better and just be more present in life. And so this book is actually going to be out August 14th. And
oh, perfect. Okay. Well, we let's support you in that. So
yes, but that's what's coming next.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time to be here today with me and for sharing your wisdom.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a joy. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope everyone else has too.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.